And right now we are joining by Kun Nad Bunnag, who has been following a web seminar on fact-checking. Kun Nad, so what's going on?
So the seminar called COFACT versus COVID-19, the main discussion during the seminar is all about how to handle with the infodemic, whether it's fake news, misinformation, and disinformation, as well as how important fact-checking is during this time.
Misinformation and disinformation, what's the difference?
Okay, so there's a slight difference. So misinformation is the spread of false information regardless of whether there's any intention to mislead the people. But disinformation is specifically to mislead the people. So disinformation has more of a malicious intent behind it compared to misinformation.
And how should we deal with it in order to check whether which one is misinformation or disinformation?
I think it's quite hard to tell at the moment because due to the surge of fake news and all the misinformation that is coming up every single day, sometimes it's still a bit difficult to find out which one is misinformation or disinformation. Misinformation can be misleading sometimes, but it might have been a little misinterpretation of the original context, but disinformation has more of a malicious intent to cause fear as well as discrimination in possible countries that might have such issues.
I understand that Kun Nad, you're talking about a so-called webinar on yesterday, right? Which brought together media, practitioners and activists in some of the ASEAN countries to discuss issues that related to fake news and disinformation. Because we are dealing not only with pandemic now, and we are dealing with the so-called infodemic, as you just mentioned. It's a word used by the World Health Organization to describe all this disinformation and fake news that has been around since the outbreak of this deadly virus. And so, was there any recommendation from yesterday's forum on how the media should deal with this issue?
So many media outlets that joined the webinar the other day, they actually mentioned that the best way for the media to respond to such infodemics would be to apply the principles and ethics of good journalism, whether it's verification, cross-checking, fairness, honoring both sides, as well as serving the public interest. So as we all agree that the role of the media is becoming more and more important, especially during times of crisis. So as the media, we all should be very critical and ensure that all the ethics and principles are in use every time we see any news in question or possible fake news and misleading information.
And any case has been raised in the webinar or the case from ASEAN countries? Any case in particular?
So most common subjects that were raised about misinformation most of them are related to health issues. For example, cure for coronavirus and precautions. Remember how yesterday we talked about fake news regarding on how to protect ourselves from the virus, whether it's gargling salt water to kill the virus or eating bananas to prevent yourself from getting the virus. Those are all fake news, but unfortunately, we still see that all the time. But we can see that there are also media outlets who are actually doing everything to combat the fake news that are spreading all the time. But besides the misinformation or disinformation regarding how to protect yourself from coronavirus, many countries also agree one thing. Like Thailand, Malaysia, Indonesia, and the Philippines all agree one thing. The government sometimes is sometimes the government is the main source of misinformation. Sometimes, for example, in the Philippines, President Duterte is the main source of misinformation. Even the health secretary was also the main source of misinformation sometimes. And most of their claims that were announced before has been busted by Rappler. They even had this web page dedicated to debunking all of the false claims made by President Duterte, as well as other fake news that were going on. One of the claims were Duterte saying that COVID-19 is more or less the same to HIV, or saying something like Philippines has low coronavirus infections, which is totally wrong, because Philippines is actually one of the countries with most infections in the ASEAN region. Like Philippines and Malaysia has a lot of infections. So Rappler has managed to debunk President Duterte's claims through their website. So that was one example of misinformation in ASEAN countries.
That's another major challenge for the professional media in dealing with another front of the pandemic. The pandemic itself is a major front for the media to be involved in the fight, but also the other front is the fake news front, disinformation front that the media also need to contribute in helping explain and debunk fake news that may cause panic, misunderstanding among members of the public.
Exactly. But besides the Philippines, in Indonesia, they're also working with social media platforms to delete all the fake news and misleading information that has been spreading on social media. However, there were still a few problems with deleting all of them, because like Facebook, there have been requests to delete around 1,000 stories that were spreading on Facebook, but they only managed to delete only half of them. And another challenge that was also mentioned in the webinar is that messaging apps is also another tool to spread the information, which is something that the government could not control, because messaging apps like Line, Facebook Messenger, or even Telegram, it's only one person to another person, but the government could not control them.
You know, as we say that the pandemic knows no boundaries, right? Fake news also knows no boundaries. And as we all know that many
no boundaries at all.
False claims or fake news start in one place and then get translated into many languages and spread from country to country. So a lot of fake news that we have seen in Thailand, in fact, are translation of disinformation or misinformation from foreign sources. And one of the attendees of the webinar was Kun Supinya Prangnarom, a very well-known activist in Thailand. And we'll talk to her later in this program to listen to her perspective on the Thai media and their role in the midst of the pandemic, and then in the middle of the infodemic as well.